Welcome. Let's be real, a company's financial report can look, well, incredibly boring, right? It's just rows and rows of numbers. But what if I told you that buried inside all that data is an actual story? A story with drama, a crisis, and maybe, just maybe, a huge comeback. Today, we're going to decode the story hidden in the numbers.
And that's really the big question we're tackling. Can we take these seemingly dry numbers from a real company and piece together a narrative that's, well, actually interesting? It turns out, you can. It's all about knowing where to look.
So, our subject for this little investigation is a company called Adroit Infotech. Let's put on our detective hats, shall we? We're going to follow the trail of numbers they've reported over the last few years and see what secrets they reveal.
Okay, so every good detective needs a key piece of evidence, a starting point. For us, that's one crucial number that's going to guide our entire investigation. Think of it as the thread we're going to pull to unravel this whole story.
And that number is profit before tax, or PBT for short. You can think of it as the bottom line before the tax man comes knocking. It gives you a super clear snapshot of whether a company's main business is actually making money or just burning through cash. If it's a positive number, great, they're profitable. If it's negative, they're in the red. This is our clue number one.
All right, so our story begins back in the first quarter of 2018. This is where we find our first piece of evidence, and you know what? It immediately tells us that something is not right.
And there it is. In just its first quarter of 2018, Adroit Infotech posted a loss of nearly 15 million rupees. Oof, that is a very, very rough start. This isn't just a little stumble out of the gate. This is a pretty significant financial hole. The big question is, why?
So this table kind of breaks it all down for us. The company brought in over 50 million rupees in income, which sounds pretty good on its own, but just look at their expenses, a whopping 65 million. They were simply spending way more money than they were making. And this is a super important point. A company can have really healthy income, but if its costs are out of control, it's still going to lose money.
So after that really shaky start, you might expect things to either get a whole lot better or a whole lot worse. But what happened next was this period of just intense volatility. The company's financials were on an absolute roller coaster.
So now we jump forward a bit to the middle of 2019, and what do we see? A positive number. Now, it's not huge, less than 1 million rupees, but hey, it's a profit. After a string of really tough quarters, this must have felt like a huge sigh of relief. It really looks like they might have finally turned a corner.
Gut. And this is a key lesson for any financial detective out there. One single data point is not a trend. That small profit, it was just one scene in a much more chaotic movie. We really need to zoom out to see the bigger picture.
Just look at this timeline. After that big loss in early 2018, they suddenly surged to a 6.6 million rupee profit. Awesome! But then they plunged right back down into a nearly 5 million rupee loss before clawing their way back to that small profit we just saw. Profit, loss, profit, loss. There is absolutely no stability here. This is the story of a company just fighting to find its footing.
So just when you think you kind of get the pattern, this up and down, volatile pattern, the story takes a sudden, really dramatic turn. We're now at the end of 2020, and believe me, this is the moment that changes everything.
Now, first glance, the fourth quarter of 2020 looks pretty solid, a profit of over 4 million rupees. I mean, after all those ups and downs, ending the year like this seems like a win, right? It looks like they finally managed to stabilize the business.
But remember, we're detectives. We have to read all the lines, not just the headlines. And hidden just below that very encouraging profit number was another number, one that completely flips the script.
And boom, a negative 145 million rupee exceptional item. This number is absolutely massive. It just completely dwarfs their 4 million rupee profit, and it hints that some kind of catastrophic event was happening behind the scenes. So what on earth is an exceptional item?
Well, an exceptional item is pretty much what it sounds like. It's a huge, one-time event that isn't part of the normal day-to-day business. Now, we don't know the exact cause for Adroit, but this is often the result of something major, like selling off an unprofitable part of the business, a massive lawsuit settlement, or a huge write-down of an asset. It's basically a financial earthquake, and in this case, it was a devastating one. So, when you combine their small operating profit with that colossal, exceptional loss, this is what you get, a final quarterly loss of over 141 million rupees.
This is the absolute lowest point in our story. It's a financial catastrophe that makes those earlier losses look like, well, like rounding errors.
A loss that big can be an extinction-level event for a company. Seriously. But the story doesn't end there. We're now going to jump forward 4 years to see if Adroit Infotech even survived. And what we find is a story of a pretty remarkable recovery. The comeback here is just staggering. Look at this. In the full year of that disastrous 2020, they lost over 143 million rupees. Now look at just the first half of 2024. They've already booked a profit of over 10 million. And even more impressively, their revenue in just 6 months is already way, way higher than it was for the entire year of 2020. This is a complete transformation.
And this chart really drives the point home. You can see that big dip in revenue in 2020. But in just the first 6 months of 2024, they've already generated more revenue than in all of 2020, and even more than in the first 9 months of 2018. That isn't just recovery, folks. That's real, solid growth.
So, what's the moral of our little financial detective story? What can we, as investigators of data, learn from Adroit Infotech's incredible journey?
All right, here are the key takeaways. First, always look at the trend, not just a single quarter's results. Second, remember that income means nothing if expenses are totally out of control. Third, always look for those exceptional items. That is where the real plot twists are usually hidden. And finally, a catastrophic loss doesn't always mean it's the end of the line. A comeback is always possible. You know, this quote really sums it all up perfectly. Every single number in a financial report is trying to tell you something. Our job is to just look closely and listen to the story it wants to share.
So Adroit Infotech seems to have turned things around in a really big way. But a detective's work is never truly done. The next chapter is always being written, one financial quarter at a time. The real question is, now that you know how to read the clues, what story will you uncover next? Thanks for tuning in.